they had a lot of musical guests on the show, and I just wanted to be a part of it. I'm a,
That hesitant sentence, seemingly simple, reveals a glimpse into who Prince truly was. A pop genius constantly torn between his desire for connection and his instinct to remain apart from the crowd. From the moment he stepped onto the world stage, Prince Rogers Nelson was an enigma that defied definition: eccentric, profound, mysterious, and explosive. But if the spotlight was where he shone, then behind the scenes existed a silent blacklist, a list of names he simply couldn't stand. And the most shocking part, these weren't second-tier artists. They were global superstars, living legends, whom Prince believed had crossed the artistic line, or were simply unworthy. What really happened between him and a certain famous pop queen? Why did he once walk out mid-performance just because of one guest? And is it true that he once cursed a fellow artist using a voodoo spell? All will be revealed in the list of 10 artists Prince couldn't stand. Join us in uncovering the truth. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the final entry where a shocking name will be unveiled. And now, having closed the chapter on the names that defined the modern pop wave, let's turn to the very first page of the list, where a fateful clash is recorded between Prince and Madonna, two icons of the 1980s who once dated before becoming sworn rivals. 1. Madonna, when two geniuses meet only to become mortal enemies. In 1985 in Hollywood, the two biggest names in global pop music appeared on the same stage, not to perform but to ignore each other. Prince had just emerged from the dazzling success of Purple Rain, the peak of his career and his ego. Madonna had just released Like a Virgin, officially crowned the Queen of Pop with 5 million copies sold in just a few months. Two superstars, two empires, two individuals sharing the same destiny to dominate pop culture. But from their first handshake, it was clear they weren't soulmates. They were two magnetic poles repelling each other. And every time they got close, everything exploded. The story between Prince and Madonna wasn't a collaboration nor a classic Hollywood romance. It resembled a tragicomedy woven with romance satire, hurt, and disdain, penned by the two most arrogant figures in pop music. They first met in the early 1980s when both were still on the rise. Madonna was a girl from Michigan trained in dance in New York, known for her rebellious spirit and fashion sense that was either impossible to copy or irresistible to imitate. Prince, raised in Minneapolis, had been a phenomenon since his teenage years, playing over 20 instruments, once dubbed the Stevie Wonder of the new generation. When Madonna proposed a collaboration, Prince agreed, partly out of curiosity, partly because, well, who wouldn't want to try a beautiful woman? They wrote a song together, Love Song, which appeared on Madonna's Like a Prayer album in 1989. But the production process was a nightmare. Madonna once said Prince always wanted to control everything. I had already written the lyrics, but he kept wanting to change them. And the music he brought, I wasn't interested. Neither of us would give in. While working, Prince often wouldn't look directly at her, barely spoke, and would even disappear mid-recording. Madonna couldn't stand the ambiguity. She was used to tight schedules, preferring to control the atmosphere in the studio. Prince, on the other hand, insisted everything be done by inspiration, and only his inspiration. The clash was inevitable. But artistic conflict was just the surface. The deeper issue was ego too big to coexist in the same room. Prince didn't believe in showbiz power. He once said, "I don't need the press awards or explanations. My music speaks for me." Madonna was the opposite. She was the queen of media, always knowing how to turn scandal into brilliant marketing. Prince hated that calculation. He felt Madonna was too clever at manipulating public opinion, and he despised it. In one interview, when asked about Madonna, Prince replied with a cold smile, "She's strategic." The short-lived romance lasted less than 2 months, but the aftermath lasted a lifetime. After the breakup, Madonna once screamed to her friends in a fit of rage, "How dare he dump me? Doesn't he know who I am?" A line that later spread through paparazzi circles, becoming living proof of the wound Prince had inflicted. Years later, in an unofficial memoir by someone close to them, a bizarre incident was recounted when Madonna and Sean Penn got into a domestic argument, and Sean punched a hole in the wall upon learning she had dated Prince. Madonna didn't call a repairman, she called Prince. And Prince, with masterful coldness, came to patch up the wall like a real handyman. Their relationship never recovered. Throughout his career, Prince rarely mentioned Madonna in any interview. Madonna, however, never hesitated to mock Prince about his height, his vegetarian habits, and even his mysterious silence. When asked about Prince after his death in 2016, she said he was a genius. but also very annoying. Still, she was the first to volunteer for a tribute to Prince at the Billboard Awards, a performance that stirred controversy. Some praised her sincerity. Many of Prince's fans were furious. They said the one who mocked Prince is now singing Purple Rain. That's absurdly fake. As for Prince, he never spoke out directly but once left a quote widely believed to be aimed at Madonna. "I can't stand those who think they're the center of the universe yet know nothing beyond the spin of the media." The line was interpreted as a jab at how Madonna built her career, not through music but through scandal press and controversy. 2. Maroon 5. When a cover song made Prince furious. If the relationship between Prince and Madonna was a deep wound that lingered for decades, then the clash with Maroon 5 was a quick, clean, and razor-sharp warning. It didn't last long. It wasn't as intense. But it clearly showed one thing: Prince wasn't just particular. He was uncompromising when it came to his own art. The story began in 2012 when Maroon 5, the popular pop-rock band fronted by Adam Levine, released a cover of the song Kiss, one of Prince's most iconic hits. With a polished sound, catchy melody, and crisp production, the cover quickly made its way onto many playlists on Spotify and iTunes. To most young listeners, it was simply a modern remake of a nostalgic classic. But to Prince, it was a slap in the face of creative integrity. In a 2013 interview with Billboard, Prince didn't hold back. He said, "Why do we need to hear another cover of an old song? Art is supposed to lay new foundations, not repeat what's already been done." That statement, though unnamed, was unmistakably aimed at Maroon 5. Among the hundreds of artists who had covered Prince's music, it was their version of Kiss that broke the camel's back. Not just a tribute performance, but a commercially released track on the overexposed album. To Prince, that was unacceptable. Because Kiss wasn't just any song, it was his artistic manifesto, unlike anything else sensual yet restrained, funky yet unconventional. A song not meant to sit in wedding playlists or supermarket background music. When Maroon 5 polished it into pop, Prince felt the soul of the song had been drained. Interestingly, Maroon 5 didn't retaliate. Adam Levine, known for his confidence, chose silence. No rebuttals, no explanations. On the contrary, the band quietly pulled the cover from digital platforms shortly after Prince's comment. Later, during a radio broadcast, Levine shared that he had met Prince once and it was a very special experience. He called Prince one of his childhood heroes. No bad-mouthing, no counterattack, just a quiet withdrawal. Prince's fans praised him for defending his art to the end, refusing to let what he created be commercialized so carelessly. They believed he did the right thing, speaking up when necessary, not backing down, just because the other party was a famous band. But on the flip side, some argued that Prince was too harsh. That music is meant to be shared to connect future generations with the past. And a cover, even if unoriginal, is a form of tribute, not destruction. This brief story leaves behind a powerful lesson about Prince's attitude toward music. He didn't see it as a product, but as flesh and blood. And when someone touched it, he reacted like a true artist, with pain, anger, and resolve. Yet we must ask ourselves, does an artist have the right to control how others perceive, recreate, or honor their work? Or at some point, should art, once it leaves the creator's hands, be allowed to live a life of its own? And Prince, was he being too rigid? Or was he the last one left guarding the sacred line between creation and imitation? 3. Beyonce. When Prince admired the talent, but distrusted the system behind it. When the 2004 Grammys opened with a duet between two massive names, Prince and Beyonce, the audience nearly exploded. A living legend, the man who once made the Super Bowl stage tremble under a purple rain, stood side by side with a rising star not only in music, but in pop culture itself. On that stage, Prince delivered fiery guitar riffs, while Beyonce swayed gracefully seductive yet composed, embodying the spirit of a true diva in control. They blended as if no generational gap or aesthetic difference existed between them. And yet behind the lights, things weren't as dreamily purple as the lyrics of Purple Rain might suggest. In fact, that was the first and last time they ever performed together. There was no studio collaboration, no joint interviews, no public praise from Prince after that event, even though Beyonce later described the experience as one of the most sacred moments of her life. So what stopped Prince, someone who never hesitated to work with artists he found interesting, from continuing an artistic connection with Queen Bee? Some answers can be found in Prince's later public statements, especially interviews from 2013 and writings revealed after his death. Prince never directly criticized Beyonce, But he often spoke about a modern music system where artists are shoved down the public's throat whether they want it or not. In this list, he explicitly named Ed Sheeran and Katy Perry. But many understood that his distrust extended to the very model that created the phenomenon known as Beyonce. To Prince, Beyonce may have represented the epitome of an artist built by a massive machine. No one could deny her stage talent, something Prince himself acknowledged backstage at the Grammys. But he remained wary of artists who were deeply tied to media branding and an expansive entourage. In a French TV interview, Prince said, "When you need 3 people to write lyrics, 5 people to make a beat, a PR team, and a squad of stylists just to step on stage, that's no longer self-made art." He didn't name names, but everyone understood. For Prince, music wasn't a product. It was a deeply personal experience. He wrote, recorded, and produced everything himself, even once claiming he recorded an entire album using just a laptop microphone to preserve its authenticity. Beyonce, backed by a hit-making machine behind each album starring in campaigns from Pepsi to Balmain, clearly did not represent that philosophy. Prince didn't dislike Beyonce for lacking talent. On the contrary, he admired her. But he didn't believe in the system that crowned her queen. On her part, Beyonce always showed profound respect. She once told Oprah that Prince was one of the greatest role models of her life. After Prince's death in 2016, she dedicated a segment of her Formation tour to honor him with purple lights flooding the stage and a quiet voice saying, "We love you, Prince." Still throughout her career, Prince never once asked to collaborate again. That silence in Prince's world spoke louder than any criticism. He didn't just keep his distance. He chose not to engage with a phenomenon he couldn't control. He once said, "I don't collaborate with those who are owned, unless they reclaim ownership of themselves." 4. Ed Sheeran, when too much became too little in Prince's eyes. After Beyonce, Prince turned his gaze toward other modern pop voices, and this time he set his sights on Ed Sheeran. One afternoon in late 2013, during a rare interview Prince agreed to do, the reporter suddenly asked, "Do you follow today's pop music?" Prince stared directly into the camera, paused for a few seconds, then smiled slightly. "They keep trying to ram Ed Sheeran and Katy Perry down our throats like that's all we need to hear. And we don't like it, no matter how many times they play it." The words weren't loud nor sarcastic like his jabs at Justin Timberlake, but it was precisely that calm delivery that made his statement cut like a razor. To the public, Ed Sheeran is the likable singer-songwriter who writes his own music, plays guitar, sings live, a true artist in the traditional sense. So why did Prince, someone who revered independence and creativity, seem so bothered by him? The answer lies in one word: oversaturation. From 2012 to 2017, Ed Sheeran was virtually inescapable across all music platforms. From the A-Team and Thinking Out Loud to Shape of You, which held the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 for 12 straight weeks. Ed became the golden boy of the global music industry. His album, Divide, sold over 15 million copies. He was on every radio station, at weddings, in supermarkets, and gyms. Anywhere there was music, chances were high you'd hear Ed Sheeran's voice. To most music lovers, this was proof of talent. But to Prince, it signaled something else: a crisis of diversity in contemporary music. Prince didn't dislike Ed Sheeran for lacking talent. On the contrary, he fully recognized Ed's guitar skills, lyrical ability, and self-produced music. But he despised how Ed became a tool in the hands of record labels pushed so high that he dominated every listening space. For Prince, art should never have just one voice, never revolve around just a few names. And when Ed Sheeran's presence became so overwhelming that there were no alternatives, he, however unintentionally, became a symbol of a system that manufactures stars and distorts the very idea of creativity to suit the market. Prince's criticism wasn't aimed at Ed himself, but at how Ed was consumed. Prince once said bluntly, "When a song is too perfect, too pleasant to the point where everyone nods along, then maybe it's no longer art, it's a product." In Prince's world, music had to have thorns, had to provoke, had to make the listener say, "What the hell is this?" the first time, and then grow to love it slowly like an unfamiliar perfume. Ed Sheeran's music, in Prince's view, was the mainstream scent, easy to smell, easy to like, and easy to replace. The story between Prince and Ed Sheeran, if it could be called a conflict, was perhaps a conflict between two eras. One came from a time of courage where artists had to tear themselves open to leave a mark. The other from the streaming age where convenience and mass appeal reigned supreme. And between these extremes lies a question still unanswered. Can a young artist, even one with talent, still be considered an artist if they are heard too much too quickly and too easily? 5. Katy Perry. When music became a formula and Prince couldn't stand it, after calling out Ed Sheeran, Prince didn't stop. In the same breath, he added another name, Katy Perry, to emphasize that the issue wasn't with one individual, but with a system. A music system which, in his view, had turned artists into packaged products and transformed art into a commodity engineered for easy consumption. Like Ed, Katy had never done anything to offend Prince. In fact, she once expressed deep admiration for him, calling him the last remaining magic in contemporary music. But that didn't spare her from criticism. Prince stated bluntly in a post-show conversation, "They keep shoving Ed Sheeran and Katy Perry down our throats. Every single day, over and over again, like no one else on earth knows how to make music." That remark was like a stone thrown straight into the heart of the music industry at the time, a world where Katy Perry was one of the reigning queens. With over 143 million records sold worldwide and 5 consecutive #1 singles from her album Teenage Dream, Katy had matched even Michael Jackson's record. But perhaps it was precisely this overwhelming success and omnipresence, on charts and ads in supermarkets on kids' shows, that made her the symbol of something Prince always opposed: the extreme commercialization of music. To Prince, music was supposed to come from anger, pain, lived experience. A hit song should not exist because a boardroom said this chorus is viral friendly. Katy Perry, with her pink hair, cartoon-like image, and lyrics catchy as slogans, was the textbook definition of mainstream pop formula: rebellious enough to grab attention, pleasant enough to avoid controversy, and neatly packaged for every radio station. But just like Ed, Katy wasn't just a product. She could write, she could tell stories through her songs, and she had a distinct stage persona. Beneath the candy coating, many of her tracks spoke of feminism, freedom of expression, and the imperfections of love. Did Prince ever see that, or was he too exhausted to listen after hearing Roar 5 times a day? Interestingly, Katy never responded. When Prince passed away, she tweeted, "And just like that, the world lost too much magic. Rest in peace, Prince." No anger, no rebuttal, no attempt to prove herself a true artist. She remained silent, perhaps allowing Prince to hold on to his final conviction, while she, the one being named, stood quietly outside that closed door. The difference between Prince and Katy wasn't about love or hate. It was about two views on music. One believed music was a spiritual child. The other accepted that music could also be a product, as long as it reached people. And when we remember Prince, the man who never bowed to formulas, who once wrote "slave" on his face to protest against record labels, we understand why he couldn't accept music being boxed in. Right after Katy Perry, Prince would return to a far more complex relationship, deeper and more enduring than any outrage over modern pop. A relationship that wasn't just musical dissatisfaction, but a decades-long battle between two kings of pop. And that man, of course, was Michael Jackson. 6. Michael Jackson, the equal, the opposite, and a lifelong rivalry. Both were born in 1958. Both were black men breaking through in a music industry still heavily burdened by racial bias. Both possessed extraordinary talent and stood atop mountains others could only gaze up at. But there was one problem: there could only be one king of pop, and neither of them wanted to come second. The quiet rivalry began in the early 1980s. While Michael Jackson was making history with Thriller, the best-selling album of all time, Prince was carving out his own path with 1999 and later Purple Rain. Though their music was clearly different, Michael leaning toward accessible pop soul, Prince exploring funk rock and unconventional R&B, the media and public endlessly compared them. And in Prince's eyes, that comparison was an insult. They once crossed paths on stage, but not as collaborators. In 1983, James Brown invited both of them up to perform at a concert. Michael stepped out smoothly, performed a few moonwalk steps, waved to the crowd, and exited with flair. Then came Prince, possibly caught off guard, or maybe simply wanting to outshine. He climbed a stage pole, awkwardly slid down, and then fell flat into the audience. Backstage, Michael smiled awkwardly. But later, according to Quincy Jones, he rewatched the tape repeatedly just for laughs. At one point he muttered, "He made a fool of himself." That incident didn't end it. Michael invited Prince to record a duet for Bad in 1987. Prince declined, not because of scheduling, but because of the opening line, "Your butt is mine." Prince asked Michael, "Who's going to sing that to whom? Because I sure as hell am not saying that to you." At that point, the tension was no longer a rumor. It was a full-blown silent war between two giant egos. Michael never publicly criticized Prince, but in later memoirs and leaked recordings, his frustration was evident. "I hate being compared to Prince. He's the kind of guy who could do something crazy. I don't trust him." Prince, as usual, said nothing. No denial, but no collaboration, no handshake, no interaction. And in his world of silence, that cold distance spoke louder than any punchline. Ironically, despite avoiding each other, they kept tabs. When Prince performed in Las Vegas in 2006 and found out Michael was in the audience, he walked to the front of the stage, played a bold, aggressive bass solo, and stared directly at Michael without blinking. Michael later recalled, "He was messing with me. Totally Prince." Yet in 2009, when Michael Jackson suddenly passed away, Prince, rarely one to express public condolences, quietly said, "It's sad to lose someone you loved." A short sentence not poetic, but layered with meaning. Perhaps beneath the coldness, the refusal to collaborate, the pride, there was a quiet respect, a kind of unnamed affection between two men born to compete yet, who understood each other more deeply than anyone else could. Prince never called Michael a friend, but he never denied his stature either. And Michael, despite his misgivings, knew Prince was a genius, like him, but in a way that could never be imitated. Their battle had no winner, but it helped define an entire era. And in his final moments, when Prince looked back on that long road, perhaps he realized not everyone he hated was someone he disrespected. Some he simply couldn't work with, not because they were beneath him, but because they were too much like him. 7. Mariah Carey, a true diva or just playing the part? After Michael Jackson, many assumed Prince's list of disfavored artists would end with male icons. But no. In a rare interview where he discussed the 1990s diva generation, Prince brought up one name with a tone that was half cautious, half annoyed: Mariah Carey. He didn't outright say he disliked her, but he dropped a cryptic line. "You know, some people sing so high they touch the sky, but I'm not sure they're grounded on earth." People instantly knew who he meant. Mariah, the songbird supreme with a 5-octave vocal range, over 220 million records sold worldwide, and more #1 singles on the Billboard chart than any other female artist, second only to the Beatles. But for Prince, it was this very perfection that made him suspicious. No one denies Mariah's talent, but Prince, a man who believed every note had to live and breathe, felt she was too technical, too polished, too far removed from the raw emotion he chased. After one award show, he reportedly said backstage, "I don't trust singers who never crack a note." Mariah, always immaculate, dressed to the nines, sometimes refusing to walk unless the carpet was laid first, may have embodied what Prince saw as the simulated diva. She was beautiful, vocally gifted, a media darling. But to him, Mariah seemed more like a painted icon than an artist who set herself on fire on stage like he once did in Purple Rain. This contrast was most evident when both performed at events in the early 2000s. Prince would quietly strum his guitar bathed in purple light. Mariah would descend golden stairs, wind machines blowing her hair with backup vocals already in place. To Prince, all of it diluted the raw core of performance, which to him was the soul of music. To be fair though, Mariah isn't lacking in depth. Songs like "Close My Eyes" Petals and "Looking In" are raw, painful reflections on childhood trauma, depression, and isolation and fame. But perhaps Prince didn't have the patience to dig through the glittering surface. Or maybe he was so used to writing, playing, and hurting on his own terms that he couldn't believe someone as flawless as Mariah had truly broken inside. What's worth noting is that Mariah repeatedly expressed admiration for Prince. After his passing, she called him a lifelong inspiration, "Ever since I was a little girl dusting off my parents' record player." But Prince never reciprocated. No insults, no reactions, just a quiet indifference that didn't need performance. 8. Justin Timberlake. When a newcomer dared to challenge a legend. Among the names that Prince couldn't stay silent about, Justin Timberlake was one of the rare cases where the conflict didn't stem from musical rivalry, but from what Prince saw as a lack of respect. Unlike Michael Jackson or Madonna, who were peers, Justin, in Prince's eyes, was merely a rookie who stepped onto the stage without first learning how to bow. It all began in 2006 when Prince performed at a small event in Las Vegas, and quietly remarked, "People may sing lower as they get older, but I can still hit the high notes." It might have seemed like a casual comment if not for the timing. Justin had just released his hit "Sexy Back" sung in a low, heavily auto-tuned voice. It's unclear whether Prince meant to throw shade, but Justin heard it loud and clear, and he wasn't afraid to fire back. In a 2007 performance with Timbaland, Justin mocked Prince on stage by crouching low and saying, "Don't worry, I can still reach high notes too." To some, it was a playful exchange between artists. But for Prince, who maintained strict lines between generations between true artists and trend chasers, it was the last straw. He never responded publicly, but from that point on, any chance of collaboration vanished. When Justin later said he dreamed of writing music with Prince's assistants replied simply, "That door closed a long time ago." But things didn't end there. The climax came during the 2018 Super Bowl. Justin was selected to headline the halftime show, and he chose to include a massive projection of Prince as a tribute. The irony: Prince had explicitly stated during his lifetime that he hated the idea of posthumous holograms resurrecting dead artists on stage. He called it cheap magic anti-art. Justin using exactly what Prince despised to honor him, for many was a sign of misunderstanding his legacy, or worse, a hollow gesture. Many Prince fans boycotted the performance, while close friends like Sheila E. publicly criticized it. Justin remained silent. No apology, no explanation. And so the story ended in a silence louder than any argument. What's worth noting is that in terms of talent, Justin Timberlake is no lightweight. He has a strong voice, excellent dance skills, was the frontman of NSYNC, and built a successful solo career with hits like Cry Me a River Mirrors and Can't Stop the Feeling. But to Prince, who viewed music as a meditative journey, Justin represented pop's glossy evolution, attractive, catchy, but lacking depth and soul. So the question arises, was Prince being too harsh, unable to forgive a younger artist over one joke? Or had he simply endured too many years of being underestimated, of seeing the industry consume rather than respect, to tolerate even a moment of carelessness? Would things have been different if Justin had apologized directly? If Prince had lived another 10 years, might he have seen Timberlake grow and change? Or was it simply a generational divide that could never be bridged? One side rooted in musical tradition, the other a poster child for the boundless era of pop without borders. 9. Whitney Houston. When even an angel wasn't forgiven by Prince. No one expected Prince to have any ill feelings toward Whitney Houston, the woman with a God-given voice who left the world breathless with I Will Always Love You, known globally as The Voice. She wasn't a songwriter, didn't compete for the title of all-around musician like Prince, and never publicly clashed with him. Yet the truth is, their relationship was never warm. In fact, Prince reportedly turned down multiple requests to work with her, and not just for artistic reasons. The story began in the late 1980s when Whitney was at her peak and looking to evolve her image. She asked her management to contact Prince to request permission to use some of his songs, even proposing a duet or a custom-written ballad. Prince's response: no reply, no polite rejection, just cold silence that dragged on for months. Later, in a closed-door meeting with his team, Prince is said to have remarked, "She doesn't live in her songs, she just swims through them and leaves." To some, that may sound like a technical critique. But to Prince, who viewed music as a union of soul and instrument, it was an outright dismissal. Whitney, despite her extraordinary voice, was not considered a true artist by his standards because she didn't write her songs, didn't play instruments, and didn't control the production process. This attitude became even clearer in 2011 when Whitney, at that time attempting a comeback after years of addiction struggles, attended one of Prince's private concerts in Los Angeles. She asked to join him on stage and sing a song. Prince refused outright. After that night, his team banned Whitney and her crew from attending the next show, citing, "She made everything spiral out of control." To be fair, Whitney was at one of the lowest points in her life. Her health was fragile, her voice weakened, and rumors of drugs and debt surrounded her. Perhaps Prince didn't hate Whitney as a person, but rather hated the fall from grace, the idea that someone with a voice that once touched heaven had surrendered to the abyss. It was something he couldn't forgive in others, or in himself. There's also speculation that Prince was irritated by how the industry overly favored Whitney. While he fought tooth and nail for control over his master recordings, Whitney could walk into a studio, follow prompts, and still be hailed as the queen. To Prince, an industry that handed out crowns to those who didn't write a single lyric was something he couldn't accept. When Whitney died in 2012, Prince didn't post any public tribute. No tweets, no condolences. Just one performance the following night where he played the beautiful ones slower than usual. And during the final solo, he paused for several seconds in silence. No one knew for sure whom it was for. This raises the question, was Prince too cold towards someone who had once been an icon? Or was it Whitney's packaged perfection that made him uneasy? As if she were a singer without cracks, without sweat, without scars. When in truth, she had suffered more than most. And if Prince had opened his heart, could these two intense souls have created a piece of music that would have silenced the world? Or were they simply destined to belong to two separate artistic dimensions that could never touch? Some rifts are born from ego, some from misunderstanding. But there are also moments when Prince didn't need to know someone deeply. Just seeing how they were praised by the media was enough to make him uncomfortable. And among those he quietly kept at a distance for many years, one name stood out: Mariah Carey. 10. Mariah Carey, a 5-octave voice but missing the human breath. At first glance, Prince and Mariah Carey never appeared to have any conflict. They never clashed publicly, never spoke ill of each other, and had never even shared the same stage. But behind the scenes, insiders knew well Prince was never fond of Mariah's musical style, once calling it a purely technical performance lacking soul. The reason for Prince, who believed every note should be lived rather than displayed. Mariah represented a style of singing that was too perfect, too showy, putting skill above emotion. In a private conversation in the early 2000s, he once remarked, "You can hit the whistle tones. Great, but can you make my heart ache? Not everyone who can sing high knows how to whisper to someone's soul." He didn't name Mariah directly, but everyone knew who he meant. At the time, Mariah was riding high with her album The Emancipation of Mimi, earning 10 Grammy nominations and being hailed by the press as the returning queen. Her comeback was a declaration of a new era of pop ballads, something Prince saw as an industrialized formula for manufacturing emotion. In truth, Mariah had openly expressed admiration for Prince. She called him a mysterious genius, the one who made me want to play piano as a child. But Prince never responded. Even when invited to collaborate on her 25th career anniversary album, he declined with a brief reply, "Doesn't feel right." To many, this was the price of artistic extremism. But others in the industry agreed with Prince. Mariah was too image-built, too flawless, and had lost the raw humanity in her music. Especially when compared to artists like Aretha Franklin, Lauryn Hill, or Erykah Badu, women who sang with breath and wounds. Mariah often felt like she emerged straight from a studio preset with perfect volume. Still, to be fair, Mariah is undeniably iconic. 19-1 Billboard, Hot 100 singles, hundreds of millions of albums, sold countless awards, and the first woman to top the charts across 4 consecutive decades in the US. She writes, produces, and has overcome both mental health crises and industry shifts multiple times. Maybe Prince didn't see himself in her, but millions of others did. Perhaps if Prince had lowered his expectations of what he called authentic music, he might have seen beyond the glittering gowns to the girl who grew up isolated, who survived racism, who nearly lost everything, and then sang herself back. And if the two had ever shared a stage, would it have been a fierce clash between two artistic galaxies, or a perfect harmony between glittering finesse and emotional depth? 10 names, 10 shades of discontent. Some annoyed Prince because they lacked depth. Some he competed with for a lifetime but could never truly let go. And some were simply too different to ever align. But whatever the reason, one thing is undeniable. Prince dared to say what the rest of the entertainment world chose to keep hidden. Not because he hated everyone, but because he loved music too much to accept anything half-hearted. In a world built on gloss and politeness, Prince chose truth, even when the cost was a lifetime of solitude. So if you were an artist, would you rather be admired by Prince or be greatly hated by him and know it meant he actually saw you?
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore. Stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.